Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Kashif Kamran and I welcome you all to the day 4 of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for exams in June 2021 being organized by ACCA Pakistan. I hope all of you can hear me. Can you kindly confirm that before I start my proceeding of the day 4? Okay, thank you very much for confirming that. And I hope my sound is loud and clear to all of you. Okay, that's great. So let's start on with the proceeding for the day 4 of the webinar. Now, on the 4th day today, the focus of the webinar is on audit evidence and audit procedures. Now, this is a very important topic, audit evidence and audit procedure. And over the next 3 hours, I will be guiding you about the examiner expectations from the topic audit evidence and procedures and how they come in the AAA paper. So just before starting on with audit evidence and procedures on day 4, just a quick recap that on the first day of the webinar, we focused on the computer-based exams and the new article published by the examiner. On the day 2, we focused on the business risk primarily, and on the day 3, we focused on the ethical and professional issues. So I hope you have all watched the previous 3 days. Either you have attended the live webinar or you have taken on the recordings. Now let's start with the 4th day of the webinar today. And the focus of the 4th day is audit procedures and evidence. Just give me 1 minute before I start discussing with you audit procedures and evidence. Now, you all know that this topic is very important from the examination point of view and is a regular feature of exam paper when you look at the AAA past papers. And again, it's very difficult that you find an exam sitting without the topic procedures. Now, in my previous many webinars, I have informed or educated students about what they should do in terms of writing a procedure or an evidence in the exam paper. And many students have benefited from that and have passed their AAA paper. I want to reaffirm that same guidance today to all of you, that how you go about writing a procedure and audit evidence in the AAA paper and how you can be excellent on this topic. So let's start with the journey and let's see what I have in store for you today. Now, in terms of my previous webinars, many times I have covered this topic and I would like to suggest 3 webinars to all of you. My March 20 webinar, you can see the hyperlink. My December 19 webinar, you can see the hyperlink. December 18 webinar, sorry, and my September 19 webinar. So these are 3 good webinars where this topic has been drilled and the topic has been explored in a greater depth. And I would recommend all of you that beside the June 21 webinar today, you should watch the 3 webinars recommended by the tutor, which is very important, right? So I hope you got that message. So 3 previous webinars, that's like 15 hours, and sorry, that's like 3 previous webinars, that's like 9 hours, and 3 hours today, that's like 12 hours. So if you spend 12 hours on this topic, procedures and evidence, you will be in an excellent position to take on this topic in your actual exams in June 21. I hope that's clear to all of you, right? Let's start on with the agenda. The agenda today, 2 articles, recommendable articles, and you will be finding them in the handout section shortly. One article is exam technique article, which is a part 4, and the part 4 deals with audit procedure. And then there is an article known as examining evidence, which gives you a clear idea or a differentiation between what is an audit procedure and what is an audit evidence. If any student is still confused between what is a procedure and what is an evidence, this article examining evidence will really be a mind opener for all of you, that how and what is the difference between a procedure and an evidence. So you will get these 2 articles in the handout section shortly. So please download them and start reading them over the next 24 hours. I will be looking at the examiner do's and don'ts. That's very important. And beside the examiner do's and don'ts, I will be looking at 3 exam papers today. I'll be looking at the September December 19 paper. So I'll be looking at the September December 19 paper on a blank workspace because this is not available on the practice platform. I'll be looking at the March 20 paper on the blank workspace, and I'll be looking at the September December 19 paper again, but this time for the question number 1C on the blank workspace. So I have chosen a variety of questions to give you the variety you have in this topic, and so that all of you can able to handle this topic. The reason of choosing 3 questions today is the variety you get in this topic. And I want to assure that you get every variety done in the webinar today. So you are in a confident position of taking on this topic. And once the webinar gets over today, the incomplete questions, you will complete them and you will watch the previous webinars. So that's your home assignment. Let's start on with the agenda, and let's see what is the examiner expectation of the topic we are starting today, which is procedures and evidence. Okay, I'm taking on my Word file as I do take every day as like my whiteboard. And today being the 4th day, the 30th of April, let's start on with the objective and see what we need to discuss today. Okay, the objective today is to focus on audit procedures and audit evidence. A very interesting and a very important topic, audit procedures and audit evidence. Now, in terms of this topic, there are 3 things you need to know. First of all, you need to understand there are 3 things. There are 2 things we are discussing today, but I'll split them into 3. Number 1, I need to guide you about a question on audit procedures very carefully in the first part of my webinar today. And how would you go about excelling on this? Secondly, I need to guide you about a question or questions on audit evidence. It's not just a question on audit evidence, it's questions on audit evidence. So on procedure, you just have a question, that's a singular, but on procedures, you have variety. And I want to cover that variety with you, right? So there are questions on audit evidence and there is a question on procedure. Now, a question on procedure is very straightforward, right? The examiner would ask you recommend the audit procedures on a fill in the blank, whatever that is, right? Examiner can ask you audit procedures on anything, and I'll be guiding you about that shortly. So that's a pretty straightforward question. Recommend the audit procedure and a fill in the blank. But when you look at a question on evidence, there are 2 types of questions which comes in the past paper. Number 1, either the examiner asks you comment on the matters, comma, and explain the audit evidence you should expect to find during the review of the working papers, question mark. That's one question, right, which comes on audit evidence. And a second question which comes on audit evidence is comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. Sufficiency and appropriateness of the audit evidence obtained by the audit team, question mark. So there are 2 types of questions which comes on audit evidence. Now I will be exploring each one of them today, and that's the reason I have chosen 3 questions today, right? 1 question on procedure and 2 questions on audit evidence, so I can give you a clear idea about how you go about handling the topic. Okay, let's explore one by one each one of them. Okay, let's first start with audit procedures first, and let's look at the examiner expectations for audit procedure. Now, the best way you can prepare for audit procedures from an examination point of view is that you read the exam technique article, read exam technique article part 4, And this exam technique article part 4 is on audit procedures. Now, once you read this article, you will have a fair idea of your examiner expectation, and you will literally know what you should be doing between what you should be doing when you're writing an audit procedure, right? Uh, Omar, obviously, I'll be covering a difference between an audit procedure and an evidence once I switch from a procedure question to an evidence question. So let's first formulate what is a procedure, and then when I jump to evidence, automatically you will get the difference. So you will need to read the exam technique article part 4 on audit procedure so that you know the examiner expectation. Examiner has given numerous examples of procedures. Examiner has drafted procedures in the article part 4, and that is a wonderful article. If you have not read it, please read it, because that's the only way you can refine your procedures from an exam perspective. Is that clear to everyone? So will you be finding time to read this article from start to end so that you exactly know what you need to do and what you need not to do when you're writing a procedure, right? Now, secondly, once you've read that, make your notes. Make your notes about the key learnings you got from the article, the key learnings you got from the article, because that would be really important for your revision you got from the article. Then obviously, once you've made your notes from the article, then go and watch the previous webinars by recommended by the tutor for audit procedures, including the June 2021. So you will watch the previous webinars after you've read the article and you have made your notes. You watch the webinars by the tutor, and that would be more interesting then, including the June 2021, and you can watch this day 4 again. Now that would give you an ideal platform, and that will give you an ideal platform so that you can start to practice the past papers. Practice all the past papers which I have recommended on procedures in my previous webinar, right? So is that approach clear to all of you? How would you go about preparing yourself for audit procedures in order to overcome the in order to be closer to examiner perspective or examiner expectation, sorry, right? So follow this approach and you will be excellent. Now let me guide you about a summary of what you should do when you're writing a procedure in exam paper. Now first of all, just do confirm me again that my voice is getting through to all of you, right? Okay, thank you very much for that confirmation. Okay, let's make a summary. Now in terms of the summary, I always tell students in my previous webinar, and that is what I've taken from the exam technique article of the examiner, that what is a good procedure? What is a good procedure in the AAA paper? First of all, you need to understand that a procedure in a AAA paper is found in the question number 1, right? What is a good procedure in AAA paper, and what the examiner expect from you? Number 1, you need to understand that the question number 1, which is for 50 marks, this particular question includes audit procedure in one of the requirements, includes audit procedures in one of the requirement. It might be the C requirement or might be the D requirement, includes audit procedure in one of the part. And on average, there are like 5 to 10 marks on audit procedures. So the marks vary, right? 5 to 10 on audit procedures. The audit procedures asked for, the audit procedures are asked on accounting matters. If you've seen the past papers, the examiner asks you to write audit procedures on share-based payment expense. The examiner asks you to write audit procedures on deferred taxation or deferred tax asset. Examiner asks you to write audit procedures on a joint venture, or examiner asks you to write audit procedures on a government grant, or examiner asks you to write audit procedures on asset held for sale. So the audit procedures in the first question is asked on accounting matters. Is that clear to everyone? So you are not getting procedures like the AA paper, where you used to get procedures on fixed asset or receivable or payable. This is a AAA paper. So you're getting audit procedures on an accounting matter. It can be on any accounting matter you must have studied in your SBR paper or in your financial reporting paper. And that is the reason it's highly recommended that you give the SBR paper prior to the AAA paper, so that you have an excellent accounting knowledge when you sit for the AAA paper. So audit procedures are asked on accounting matters. Now, knowing where this question comes in, what is the nature of question? Recommend the audit procedures, and it is on the accounting matters. Let's see what your examiner expects from you when you're writing a procedure in the exam paper. You need to understand that each procedure you write in exam paper is worth 1 mark, is worth 1 mark. So when the examiner says recommend the procedure, when the examiner says recommend the audit procedure, look at the number of marks. Suppose there are 6 marks. So if there are 6 marks, then you need to write 6 procedures. If there are 5 marks, you need to write 5 procedures. So each procedure is worth 1 mark. Now comes the big question: how to gain 1 mark, and what is a good procedure? What is a good procedure? Question mark. Or how to write a good procedure? Are the 3 questions valid? Is that the 3 questions you will have in your mindset as a student? And or how to write a good procedure? So have I read your mindset effectively, all of you? Okay, let's get down to how to write a good procedure and gain 1 mark. I hope you're all listening to me, because there is no yes and no from your side in the chat box. I hope you're all listening to me. My voice is getting through to all of you, and you're understanding what am I writing on the screen, right? Okay, how to gain 1 mark? A good procedure. First of all, when you're writing a good procedure, you need to understand that a good procedure has to be case specific. You cannot write anything in AAA paper which is out of the case. For example, if the examiner is asking you to write procedures on a government grant, then that government grant will be a paragraph in the case study, right? For example, the examiner asks you to write audit procedures on the government grant for 5 marks, right? Now, what you need to do is, you cannot go to the exam hall with a rote learning of accounting procedures. No, never. That's a very bad way of doing the AAA paper. The good thing is that when you go to the exam hall, you will get a case study, question number 1. And in the case study, when the examiner is asking you to write an audit procedure, that audit procedure is on the government grant. So what will be there in the exam paper? There will be a paragraph on government grant in the case you are reading. So when you come across the paragraph on government grant, suppose you're reading the case, right? While reading the case, the question number 1, which is a long case, while reading the case, wherever you get a paragraph on government grant, stop and read it carefully, because that paragraph will tell you what procedures will you make on government grant. So there will be a paragraph on government grant where the examiner must be explaining about the grant you got as a company, what are conditions associated with the grant, what is the tenure of the grant, etc. So while reading the case, wherever you get a para on government grant or whatever accounting matter the examiner has asked for, stop and read it carefully. Now, when you stop and read the paragraph on the government grant carefully, what will you get out of the paragraph on government grant? You will get some important information. You will get some important information about government grant, which I refer as a tutor. You will get some important information about the government grant while you were reading the case, and I refer them as facts. So I use the short form facts. Is everyone clear to the bullet number 3? So when you're reading the case and you get a paragraph on government grant and you need to make procedures on government grant, stop and read it. You will get some important information about the government grant, which are basically known as facts, right? So you get the facts. For example, the amount of grant, for example, when you got the grant, for example, the conditions associated with the grant, and how the management has recognized the grant. Have they recognized the grant as other income, or have they recognized the grant as a deferred income? So you will get to know about numerous facts about grant. Now, once you know the facts and you know exactly what's happening in the case about the government grant, you need to convert the facts to audit procedures, because practically whenever the auditor goes for audit, so you make procedures on facts, you make procedures on the knowledge of business, you make procedures on knowledge of the government grant. So in the exam paper, when you know the facts, you will convert the facts, and I'll be demonstrating that in 5 minutes. You will convert the facts to what? You will convert the facts to a procedure. How many procedures? 5 procedures, because you have 5 marks, for example. Now, when you're converting the facts to an audit procedure, what is a good procedure? What you should be careful about when you're making a procedure? What is a good procedure? A good procedure and the attributes of a good procedure. The attributes of a good procedure is it should have an A, it should have an S, and it should have a P. And this is from the examiner article, right? Examiner article, which I recommended you to read. Examiner says that a good procedure should have an action, number one. A good procedure should have a source, number two. And a good procedure should have a purpose in order to get 1 mark. If your procedure has an action, your procedure has a source, your procedure has a purpose, then you are getting 1 out of 1 for every procedure. So that is what the examiner is telling us, that a good procedure have an action, number one, a source, number two, and a purpose, number three. And that is equal to a good procedure. So if you want to get 1 mark per procedure, 1 mark is equal to one procedure, and one procedure is equal to a good procedure, and a good procedure is equal to A plus S plus P. Now, if you write a procedure when you are practicing at home, any of the attribute is missing, you will not get 1 out of 1. Suppose you write A and S, but you don't write the P, you will get half a mark. Suppose you write A and P, but you don't write the S, you will get half a mark. So if you miss any of the attribute, how many marks will you get? Will you get 1 out of 1? No, you will get 0.5 out of 1, right? So is everyone clear with the definition of a good procedure before I demonstrate you what is an action, before I demonstrate to you what is a source, and before I demonstrate to you what is a purpose? So you need to read the case. From the case, you need to find the facts. You will convert the facts into a procedure, but when you are writing a procedure, you need to assure that a good procedure has the attributes A, S, P, and that's 1 out of 1. And a procedure is such an important syllabus area where you can score 100% marks. So if there are 10 marks of procedure, literally you can score 10 out of 10. You cannot even lose a mark provided you look at the bullets I wrote in front of your screen. Bullet number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you learn these bullets, you apply these bullets, you will score 10 out of 10 in procedures, 100% marks in procedures. Okay, let me demonstrate that. 1 mark, let's give you an example and then convert that to the past paper. For example, let's first start with A, action. A procedure should start with action. A procedure should start with action. I hope you all agree, because the literal meaning of the word procedure means to do something, to do something. Is that clear? Procedure means to do something, right? Auditor is doing something. Procedure means auditor is demonstrating something. Am I right? So procedure should start with an action. For example, I start my procedure, review the board minutes. Have I started my procedure with action review? Is review an action? Review the board minutes, right? Look at the next one. Recalculate. Recalculate the amortization expense. So have I started my procedure with action recalculate? Discuss with those charged with governance or discuss with management. Have I started my procedure with discuss? Discuss is an action. So whenever you are writing a procedure, you need to start procedure with an action. Or I write my procedure, analyze the receivable days. Analyze the receivable days. So analyze is an action. So are you all getting the sense? So you need to start it with a action. So action means you're doing something. Now, after you start a procedure with action, a procedure should have a source. Source. A procedure must have a source. The source means the subject matter. The source means the subject matter. Now look at the example I gave you above. Let me do the action in yellow, and let me do the source in just 1 minute. Let me do the source in another color. Let me do the source in blue. Okay, for example, review the board minutes, right? So if I just copy my list from up here and I copy them down, okay, just give me some space so I can take this to my next page. For examples can be taken to the next page. Okay, for example, okay, source. The source means a procedure must have a source. Source means a procedure must have a subject matter. Now see, review the board minutes. What's the subject matter? What's the source in the first procedure? Review the board minutes. What's the subject matter? What's the source? Everyone, very good answers. Board minutes. So board minutes becomes the source. Recalculate the amortization expense. What's the subject matter? What's the source? What am I recalculating? Am I recalculating something very specific? Yes, I'm recalculating something very specific, amortization expense. So that becomes the subject matter. Discuss. With whom? Am I discussing with someone specific? So do you believe that specific becomes the subject matter? So those charged with governance becomes the subject matter. Okay. Analyze the receivable days. Am I analyzing something particular? Am I analyzing something specific? So is that the subject matter? Yes, the receivable days. So every procedure should have a subject matter. What are you reviewing? What are you recalculating? With whom are you discussing? What are you analyzing? So if you ask questions like such to yourself, I hope you get the track. For example, what are you reviewing? If you ask a question, you will make a good procedure. What are you recalculating? What are you recalculating? If you ask questions like such back at home, the chances is you will not make mistakes. What are you recalculating? Number next. Just 1 minute, sorry. What, with whom are you discussing? With whom you are discussing? And you will get to the subject matter. Or what are you analyzing? You will get to the subject matter. So if you ask questions like such to you yourself, will you get subject matter done in the exam paper? Is that clear to all of you? Are you 100% clear? Okay, the last thing. So the last thing is purpose. A good procedure should have a purpose. A purpose means the objective of performing the procedures, right? The purpose of performing the procedures. Let's put them in a green color. The purpose of performing the procedure. So what is the objective of performing the procedure? Now, if I just copy my list from up again, now see, if I put my list here, how many marks am I getting? Review the board minutes. I have an A, I have an S. Recalculate the amortization expense. I have an A, I have an S. Discuss with those charges governance. I have an A, I have an S. Analyze the receivable day. I have an A, I have an S. Am I getting 1 mark or am I getting half a mark? I'm getting half a mark, right? So should I write the purpose? Review the board minutes to confirm the approval and the business rationale, for example, business rationale of acquiring the new subsidiary, So that becomes my example. So can you see this word to confirm? And is that what is the objective? Every time you write objective, you say to ensure, or every time you write objective, you say to confirm. Now, can you see the 3 colors, yellow, blue, green? So is it a 1 mark procedure now? Okay, recalculate the amortization expense to confirm the accuracy of the expense recorded. To confirm the accuracy of the expense recorded. So I have a reason. Can you perform a procedure as an auditor without a purpose? Will that be a useless procedure if you don't have an objective? A procedure without an objective is useless. Discuss with those charged with governance to confirm reasons why uh, the product has been discontinued, for example. You confirming with the management the reasons why you have discontinued the project, to confirm reasons why the product has been discontinued, or the basis of the provisions of, or the basis of the provisions recognized. So you can discuss anything with the management, right? To confirm the reasons. So most of the time when you're doing a discussion, the purpose is to confirm reasons. So discussions are for reasons. Analyze the receivable days to confirm whether the customers are struggling to pay over time. The customers are struggling to pay over time. If the receivable days are increasing, then that means the customers are struggling to pay, and that will help you in determining the amount of provision allowance for bad debt. So to confirm whether customers are struggling to pay, for example, these are layman procedures, right? Don't do an argument on these procedures. But is everyone clear with yellow, blue, green? Is everyone clear with ASP? So will you implement this back at home? Will you implement this in the exam paper? You can use the word confirm or you can use the word ensure, right? So either you say to confirm or you say to ensure. So is that approach understandable to all of you? So what is the difficulty in a procedure? What is the difficulty in the procedure? Students struggles. So I hope you refine them, you fine tune them. Let's do an exercise and exit from the procedures, right? Let's do a real exercise. Let me do a recap, and I will do exactly the same exercise with you, and you will continue this back at home. Look at the exercise number 1. See, let me do a recap. What is a good procedure? In the question number 1, you get a procedure question, mostly for 5 to 10 marks. The procedures are on accounting matters. Each procedure is worth 1 mark. Recommend the audit procedure. How to gain 1 mark? A good procedure should be case specific. For example, the examiner asks you to write procedures on a government grant. While reading the case, wherever you get a paragraph on the government grant, stop and read it carefully. You will get some important information about the grant. Convert the important information to audit procedures. A good procedure have ASP, and that's how you make a formula. 1 mark is equal to 1 procedure is equal to a good procedure is equal to ASP. And then I give you an example. Action, example. Source, example. And the questions you should ask yourself, and then come down with purpose. Can you do one exercise from the September-December 19 paper so that you're excellent on audit procedure and we exit from this topic and start with audit evidence? And you need to watch my previous webinars as well, right? Okay, let's do a drill. Let's do a drill on audit procedures. Let's see how much have you understood and how much you concentrate when I'm speaking. It's your test now, right? Drill and audit procedure. I'm taking into account the September-December 19 paper. The question number 1, let's take that on the screen and let's start doing it. Now this paper is not on the practice platform, right? So I am showing you the PDF version of this paper. So this paper is not available on the practice platform, right? So let me show you the PDF. Okay, just 1 minute. Can you all see the September-December 19 paper in front of your screen here? Okay, that's great. If you can all see the September-December 19 paper in front of your screen, scroll down the paper and you come to the question number 1. So this is the start of the question number 1. You scroll down and you come to the requirements. In the requirements, which is in the exhibit 1, you know the exhibit 1 is the email of the partner. And in the exhibit 1, you have to prepare a briefing note. And in this briefing note, there is a requirement which is for audit procedures. You go down, there is a requirement coming here, C. Can you all see the C requirement here? Design the principal audit procedures to be performed in respect of. How many marks we have in total for the procedures? 8 marks. So you have 8 marks over here. And you need to make a procedure number 1 on the classification of the $48 million investment in Pepper Company. So will there be a paragraph about a $48 million investment in Pepper Company in the case paper? So will you read that paragraph carefully and convert that paragraph into procedure, everyone? So will there be a paragraph about classification? There will be. Okay, next, the government grant. So will there be a paragraph about the government grant in the paper, which you need to convert into procedures? So there is no need for rote learning, right? Now, once you know you need to write procedures on the investment in Pepper, and you need to write procedures on the government grant, it's so easy. You need to write procedures, right? And you need to write procedures number 1 on the investment in Peppers, and you need to write procedures on the government grant. How many marks we have for each? We had 8 in total, right? So should we allocate 4 marks to each of them? Investment in Pepper 4, government grant 4. I'll do one with you, you do the other yourself. Investment in Peppers and government grant. Now, what is the step 1 in exam paper? You will read the case and you will identify the para where information is given for Peppers and government grant. Sorry, where information is given about investment in Pepper and the government grant. Investment in Peppers and government grant. So where information is given in this. So will this be a first step? So you will read the case, identify the para where information is given for investment in Peppers and the government grant in a practice platform. This question is not available on the practice platform, so I'm doing it outside just to guide you on the steps. Next, let's see where is the paragraph on investment and the government grant. You go back to the case study and you scroll down in the exhibit number 1 and exhibit number 2. You start to read exhibit number 2. You go down. On the first page, there is nothing about investment and government grant. You come to the next page. On the next page, you find the word Pepper here. So that means this is the paragraph telling us about Pepper. So this paragraph over here is telling us about the investment of a $48 million the company has done in Pepper. So this is a big paragraph which the examiner has given to us about investment in Pepper. Will you read this paragraph and you identify the main points from this paragraph and you convert them into writing 4 audit procedures? That's number 1, right? Then you go down till the time you find a paragraph on government grant. Okay, see, so easy. There is a heading of a government grant. So this means this paragraph right from here up to here is a paragraph on the government grant. So there is a big paragraph on government grant here, which we should highlight. So tell me, In AAA, do we have rote learning procedures? Or do we have a situation given by the examiner which we need to read and find the facts and convert the facts to the procedures? So is there a need to go into the exam hall with rote learn procedures? Not at all. I never agree with this, that you rote learn procedures. It's situation based. Exactly. It's case specific, Salva and Abdul Wahab. Excellent. So let me give you an idea. You start with you start with government grant, right? Let me unhighlight this for a minute. Okay, you have the information here. You just okay, you just unhighlight the government grant. Suppose this is a paragraph in the paper and you're reading this. I'm just copying this paragraph and I'm taking this paragraph in my Word file over here. Read the case. So let's see how you read the case, right? Suppose you're giving a computer-based exam and you're reading the case. I'm just copying the case over here for 5 minutes, so I can do a very good analysis of this. And when you're doing in the computer-based exams, you can do the highlighting, and the highlighting can help you, right? So suppose you're giving a computer-based exams, and this is the information given to you about the government grant. Just give me 1 minute. If I can open the practice platform for you. Okay, now I'm reading the case about the government grant, right? And I go back to my practice platform. I open the blank workspace because this question is not available on the practice platform. So I open the practice platform blank workspace. I go down, I have the blank workspace. I'll resume my blank workspace. Okay, so I get my blank workspace in front of my screen. I'll open the word processor, and in the word processor, in the previous classes, previous webinar, whatever I have written over here, I'm just deleting that. Okay, so I'm just deleting everything from here. I'll choose the heading 2 so that you can see that very clearly. And I start to I need to make an audit procedures on government grant. Audit procedures on the government grant for 4 marks. Now I need to write the procedures, right? And procedures are written in bullets, right? So you can use the bullets, you can use the numberings, right? So you can use the numberings. Can you see the numberings given here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see the bullets given here? Bullets. So you can write the procedures in bullets and numbers, right? Let's see how we go about it. Now in the exam, you're reading the information, right? Suppose you're reading this information. The government provides grant to organizations which commit to investing in properties to reduce carbon emission and energy consumption. Grants are also available to organizations to promote the benefit of recycling to customer. In January 20x5, Ryder Company received a grant of $20 million. Is that an important information that Ryder received a grant of $20 million? Should I highlight this as my first information? Next, the only condition attached to the grant. So is there a condition which I need to verify? Is condition an important information? The only condition attached. So as an auditor, should I verify the condition? The only condition attached to the grant is that half of the amount must be used to upgrade existing assets. So half the amount must be used to upgrade the existing assets to make them environmental friendly. So I need to confirm whether the company has exactly spent half the amount on upgrading the existing assets to make them environmental friendly or not. None of the amount received has yet been spent, but it is planned that it will be used to finance the capital expenditure across the group property portfolio. So none of the amount has yet been spent. So none is yet been spent. So I can discuss with management what is their intention, when they need to spend this amount, by what time, but they plan to invest, they plan to spend it, right? They plan to spend it on the capital expenditure across the group property portfolio, but when they're spending it on the capital expenditure, half of that should go to the upgrading of the existing assets, right? The other half of the grant will be used to fund an advertising campaign. So the other half should be used to fund the advertising campaign. So as an auditor, I should be very particular that half should go to funding the advertising campaign. According to the group finance director, the full $20 million is included within operating profit in the projected group profit and loss account? Have they done the right accounting treatment by taking the full amount of the grant in the operating profit? Or should they record it as a deferred income initially, and when they utilize it, they should take it into the income? Is that the right treatment of taking the full government grant into the other income even though they've not yet utilized it? So should they record it initially as a deferred income, and later when they start to utilize it, they should start taking it to their profit and loss account? Is that right? So do I have important information in the case where I can convert that to procedures? Now, for example, I'm just writing things over here. You read the case, number one. Number two, have you identified facts from the case? Have you identified facts from the case? Number two, identify facts. So have you identified facts from the case, everyone, in the green? We have, right? Now, once you've identified the facts from the case, highlighted in green above, what you need to do, number three, you need to convert the facts to procedure. Convert the facts to procedures. And you need to remember 4 marks is equal to 4 procedures and is equal to ASP, and then only you score 4 out of 4. See how I go about it. If I'm writing my first procedure, I'm writing it on the Microsoft Word. I hope that doesn't distract you. I'm not just writing it on the practice platform just to save my time. I hope you are fine with that, because over the last 3 days, I have guided you a lot about the blank workspace and the practice platform, right? So just to save my time, I'm putting it on the Microsoft Word, and that I hope there is no issues with you, right? Procedure number one. I put up number one procedure here. In January, the company received a grant. So I should review the grant agreement. I should review the grant agreement to confirm, number one, the amount of grant received and the date received, and further to confirm the conditions associated with the grant. Now, a lot of time the student makes 2 procedures in exam paper. Review the grant agreement to confirm the amount of grant and the date of grant. And the second procedure, review the grant agreement to confirm the conditions associated with grant. No, you can save your time. You make 1 procedure with 2 reasons. You will get 2 marks in exam paper. This is a time saving technique rather than writing review the grant agreement 2 times. So review the grant agreement. Is review a action, yellow? Is grant agreement a source, blue? And is confirm a reason, green? To confirm the amount and to confirm the condition. So is that the reason am I reviewing the grant agreement? For the amount, for the date, for the conditions? So rather than you write 3 procedures, review the grant agreement for the amount, 1, review the grant agreement for the date, 2, review the grant agreement for the conditions, 3. No, write it professionally as I wrote in front of you. So how many marks will I get for this procedure? I will straight away get 2 marks. Number 2, half the amount is to be spent on upgrading the assets and half is to be spent on advertising campaign. But have they spent any amount yet? Have they confirmed? Have they spent any amount yet? But do they plan to spend it? Do I exactly know when they plan to spend it? Next 6 months? Should I discuss with management the plan by when they plan to upgrade the assets and by when they plan to uh, uh, do the advertising campaign? Okay, you can also do this. One student is asking a question, Faisal, so I'm just putting it on the screen. He's asking, can we do the bank statement? Yes, you can do the bank statement, right? Okay, is my sound getting through to everyone? Okay, that's good. Review the bank statement to confirm the receipt of the grant. To confirm the receipt. So from the agreement, you confirm the amount, and from the bank statement, you confirm the receipt of the grant of $20 million. So has $20 million come to your bank account? Yes. So is review a procedure? Definitely. Is bank statement a source? Yes, it is. And is the reason valid? Definitely. We are to confirm the receipt, not the amount, the receipt. So amount is one, receipt is second. So good procedure, right? It will give me another 1 mark, and I get to 3. Next, should I discuss with management? Should I discuss with rider company management? Specific. Please refrain from writing the word management in the exam paper. Write the name of the company before it. Discuss with management is a very journal word. Discuss with riders management. Riders management. Is that important? Discuss with riders management the, their plan and timeline, to confirm by when the grant amount will be utilized on upgrading assets and funding the advertising campaign and funding the advertising campaign and funding the advertising campaign. So I should discuss is a procedure action. Riders management is the source uh, to confirm by when the amount will be spent and on upgrading the assets and on funding the campaign, right? So that's the reason. Yes, I have already, Ahmed Kamal. I have discussed with rider management the plan and timeline to confirm by when the grant amount will be utilized. So will they plan to utilize it in the next 6 months, so on and so forth. So 1 mark. So have I got my 4 marks so far, everyone? Have I got my 4 marks? But this is a webinar, right? So should I teach you more rather than stopping at 4? You go further. Have they recognized the full amount of the grant, which is the wrong accounting treatment? So should I discuss with them why have they recognized the full amount when indeed nothing has been utilized yet? So should I do another discussion? Discuss with Riders finance director. I think that would be more appropriate to discuss with. So I put a specific person here, right? Discuss with rider finance director the reason why the full amount has been recognized as income to confirm or understand the finance director rationale. Should I understand the finance director rationale why he has utilized the full amount into other income, which is the wrong accounting treatment? But he must be having some rationale, right? Am I right? He must be having a rationale, right? So should I understand his rationale? Why? Before I tell him you are wrong. So discuss is a procedure again, but we are discussing with a specific person, rider finance director. Please try to change person. If you are discussing anything accounting, discuss that with the finance director. If you're discussing something regarding employees, discuss with the human resource director. So please try to change the position of management, the reason why the full amount has been recognized. So am I discussing with management the right thing? Why have they recognized the full amount as income to confirm and understand? To confirm and understand the finance director rationale before I tell him you're wrong. So will I get another 1 mark for understanding the rationale of the finance director? Is everyone clear? And should I then inform him that the full amount shouldn't be recognized in the operating income because the grant has not been utilized and it should be recorded as a deferred income? Is that right? So are you getting the track? Everyone, please confirm me. So did I perform anything unusual which I taught you? You read the case, you identify the facts, you converted the facts into a procedure? Did I deviated you from a yellow, green, and blue? Or did I use the yellow, green, and blue every time? Right? So I went to 5. So I hope you understand that when you are making a good procedure, it's so simple. Number one, you just quickly read the case. Read the case. Number two, identify the facts and then convert facts to procedure. And when you're converting a fact to a procedure, remember A plus S plus P. Is that easy? No, colors are just for the classroom, right? Just to give you a track. Okay, there is a A, there is an S, there is a P. Obviously, you're not doing colorings in exam paper. Obviously, that's just a classroom, right? I hope who asked this question, Rosemary. Okay, is that clear? So is the colors guiding you ASP? And will you do that at home, ASP? So is it difficult? And now tell me, what is the difficulty with the procedure? You need to watch my previous webinars. In every webinar, I do ASP, ASP. You watch my 3 previous webinars I recommended you, and you will be so excellent on this topic. So will you convert the investment yourself, investment in paper? Will you take the paragraph of investment in paper at home? Will you read this para investment in paper? Will you identify facts? And will you convert the facts into procedure, everyone? That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You can even share the screenshots on the WhatsApp group. So if I get time, I can just pick up your screenshot and say, good, wonderful. So I randomly choose your screenshots and reply to you. So is that clear? This is your homework, right? On investment in Papa. Right. So procedures are done. I hope you got an interesting insight into procedures in the last 1 hour since we started the webinar. So 1 hour into the webinar, how confident you are feeling that you can really take on this topic to an excellent level in the next 1 month? Can you take this to an excellent level in the next 1 month? So how was the first 1 hour today? Did you gain something in the first 1 hour? You did. That's good. Thank you. Thank you very much, right? So let's start on the next journey before I give you the break. In the next part, before I give you the break, number one, we need to start working on the next topic, which is audit evidence. And there was a question from a student, what's the difference between a procedure and an evidence? So let's start on the topic audit evidence now. Okay, let me just make it bifurcated so everyone knows we're starting with the next topic now, audit evidence. Okay, let's start with audit evidence and let's make a very good approach on audit evidence as well, right? Just like procedure. Now I go step by step, a bit slow, so I can just guide you about how you should go about writing your procedures. Okay, thank you very much, Naman. Okay. Soraya, I have already written my answer on the Word file. So that when I share with you, you will get the answer. I didn't wrote it on the blank sheet, right? It's on my support file, which I share with you every day, right? So don't worry about it, right? Okay, come back. Audit evidence. Now, I told you that in terms of audit evidence, there are 2 types of questions which comes in exam paper. There are 2 types of questions which come on this topic, which comes on this topic in past papers, and you should be prepared for both. Number one of the question which comes on this, let me copy this from above. I just wrote those questions at the beginning of the webinar today. So rather than wasting my time, I can just copy those questions here. Control C, see how that's an ease of computer, whether it's the Microsoft Word or it's the practice platform. You can just copy paste things. Control V. 2 types of questions, right, which comes on evidence. Let's understand each one of them, and then I give you the break. and then we'll explore the questions after the break. The first question is a very common question, which comes a lot of time. The second one comes, but comes rarely, right? So the first and the second question. Let me first get to the question number one here. Control C. Let's analyze the question number one. Analyze the first question. Just like I did the analysis of procedures. Okay, now when you look at the first question, which is very common in the past paper, and you copy it down and you start with the analysis. See, this question is asking so many things from you. The question is asking you to comment, number one, but comment on the matters. That's number one, matters. And then there is a break in the question. I hope you can all see the break, which is overlooked in the exam hall. There is a break in the question, and then the question asks you explain. Comment, explain. Comment is on the matter, and explain is the audit evidence, not the procedures, right? Explain is the audit procedures. Explain is the audit procedure. Audit evidence, sorry. Explain the audit evidence. You should expect to find during the review of the working paper file. Who is the you here? Who is the you? You is the manager, right? In the AAA paper. So first of all, understand the you. You is the manager in the case study, which you are. Now you need to step into the shoes of the manager for next 1 hour. You is the manager in the case study, right? And the examiner is saying you should comment on the matters and you should explain the evidence that would be in the file while you are reviewing the working papers. What is the manager doing? The manager is doing the review of the working paper file, right? Review the working paper file. Do the management review the working paper file? Yes. So to get an assurance that work has been performed brilliantly, there is no problem, no error in the work, and just to get the reasonable assurance on the work. Now, the manager reviews the working paper, and while the manager is reviewing the working paper, the examiner is asking you that being a manager, you have to do two things. First, you need to comment on the matter, and secondly, you need to explain the audit evidence while you are reviewing the working paper file. Now, what exactly your examiner expects from you when the examiner asks you comment on the matters? It's so simple, because the matter given in the exam paper, when you are attempting a question on evidence, right? The matter given in the question on evidence is what matter? It's an accounting matter. So whenever an accounting matter comes in AAA paper, it's so simple what to comment on the accounting matter. Every time you're commenting on an accounting matter, even when you attempt an audit risk question, when you attempt a risk of material misstatement question, and you're looking at an accounting treatment, what comment you do? The same comment you're doing here. Comment on the matter. The first comment you're doing is you're commenting on the materiality of the accounting matter. Materiality. So you comment on the materiality. The second comment you do on the accounting matter is itself the accounting treatment. You comment on the accounting treatment. And the third comment you do is the risk of material misstatement if the accounting treatment is wrong. If the accounting treatment is wrong, then you will say what is the risk of material misstatement. That means you comment on the understatement and the overstatement. That's exactly what you do in audit risk. That's exactly what you do in a risk of material misstatement. Am I right? So how many comments are you doing? 3. Why are you doing comment on the materiality, accounting treatment, and risk of material misstatement? Because the matter here is which? The matter here is accounting matter. The matter could be IFRS 2, the matter could be IFRS 5, the matter could be IFRS 3, the matter could be IAS 20, the matter could be IAS 21, the matter could be IAS 36, 38, 40, 41, anything. So when you are a manager and you're looking at an accounting matter, so first of all, you will comment on the materiality, you will comment on the accounting treatment, and you will comment on the risk of material misstatement, that what is under and overstated, only when the treatment is wrong. A lot of time in the past paper, in the question on audit evidence, the accounting treatment was right even. So then you need to support the accounting treatment. Then automatically the risk of material misstatement will go off, and I'll show you that. When you comment on the materiality, the new marking scheme is 1 mark you will get for the comment on the materiality. Then you will comment on the accounting treatment, you will get 1 mark for the comment on the accounting treatment. And then you comment on the risk of material misstatement and you get 1 mark for the comment on the under and overstatement. So there is like 3 good marks when you're commenting on the meta. So the marking scheme has revised. I think in my previous webinar, I used to tell you 1.5 marks, but when I am looking at the 2021 exams, this is an area where the marking scheme have been skimmed down. I think even in my last December 20 webinar, I guided about the marking scheme of 1. So is everyone clear with the breakdown of comment on the meta? And the reason why are we commenting on materiality, accounting treatment, and risk of material misstatement? Is everyone clear? Okay, that's great. Accounting treatment. I'll be exploring that shortly. And it's not that simple. Perhaps if you're understanding, it's too simple. But I've given you the breakup, but I'll bring the twist and challenges in next 5 minutes. Okay, the next thing you need to do is explain. What do you need to explain? You need to explain the evidence. Evidence, where? You need to explain the evidence in the working papers. What evidence will you expect to find in the working paper? Tell me, what evidence you will find in the working paper file? While you're reviewing the working paper file, what evidence will you find in the working paper file? Now, imagine you have a working paper file in front of you and you are conducting a review. Imagine you have a working paper file in front of you and you are reviewing the working paper file, right? Imagine the typical box file, right? Even though we are in a technological era, but we still imagine the box file, right? Full of papers, right? And you are reviewing the working paper file. So imagine you have a working paper file in front of you. I hope you're all imagining that. And you are reviewing the file. So what will you find in the file? What will you find in the file? There are good answers coming from students. Some students are saying papers, documents. Some students are saying supporting documents. Wonderful, good answers. So what will you find in the files? In the file you will find the working papers of the auditor. Am I right? Working papers of the audit team. So as a manager, when you look at the working paper file, what are you finding in the working paper file? You're finding the working papers of the audit team. Now there can be so many types of working papers which are put in the file. There can be so many types of working paper. So many types of working paper put in file by the team. Now, for example, let me give you an example here. Suppose we bring the same question we were doing above here, this one, the government grant, right? Suppose this question is not on procedures. Suppose this question is not on procedure, right? Let's convert this question to comment on the matters and explain the evidence. Suppose you get a question in the exam paper on government grant here, and this question now is having a different requirement. Suppose this question is asking you comment on the matters and explain the evidence, right? It will just take 5 minutes and we'll go off this requirement. Okay, if you get this question in the exam and the requirement of this question, suppose, is comment on the matters and explain the evidence, right? Are you all comfortable that I'm just taking the question on a procedure and converting that to a question on audit evidence, right? Okay, you get this question, government grant, and you know my lecture and you go to the exam hall. The very first thing you will do in the exam paper is you will comment on the matters and then you will tell examiner explain the audit evidence. Suppose you have like something like 7 marks. You have 7 marks for this question, right? Comment on the matters and explain the evidence. Now you are sitting in the exam hall and you remember my lecture, day 4 of the webinar. You say, the sir told us that the first comment I need to do is on the materiality. So I'll start first with, I'll say the amount of grant that is $20 million, is a fill in the blank percentage of the total assets. Obviously, the total assets must be given in the question number one. I'm just ignoring it, but I'm just guiding you on a skeleton answer. The amount of grant, that is $20 million, is fill in the blank percentage of the total assets, which is material to the financial statements. Full stop. You get your first 1 mark. After the full stop, you get to the next. The government grant, the government grant received should be recorded as deferred income, should be recorded as deferred income until it is utilized by the management or by the rider management, right? Okay, the grant should be recorded as a deferred income until it is utilized by the management when it can be taken to when it can be recognized as income, so initially it is your liability, right, till the time you go into and recognize it as an income, right? No need to give references. There is no marks for references of ICE 20 here. So many times in my previous webinar I've guided you on that. No need to quote ICE 20. You need to quote the accounting treatment. You get marks for accounting treatment, right, not for ICE 20 quoting. The grant received should be recorded as a deferred income until it is utilized by the management when it can be recognized as an income. Currently, have I wrote the accounting treatment in the context that it should be recognized as a deferred income until it is utilized by the management when it can be recognized as an income? I get 1 mark for writing the brief accounting treatment of the government grant. And then I put a full stop and I say, because the grant is recognized in full as other income, other income, even though it's not utilized, thus currently the other income is overstated, and the deferred income or the liability is understated. Am I right? I get my last 1 mark, 3 marks in this paragraph. But see how much I wrote. You cannot just drag the treatment unnecessarily unless and until it's required. The grant is a very short accounting treatment, right? But I'll just be showing you another accounting treatment over which you have to write lines and lines and lines. But grant is such a short accounting treatment, you can save your time. So can you all see the 3 marks? Comment on the matter is clear to everyone? Is comment on matter clear to everyone how I went about it? Is that the same way you write a risk? Is that the same way you write an audit risk answer? Is that the same way you write a risk of material misstatement answer? You do, right? Great. So now once you have comment, how many marks have you got out of 7? No, we don't consider the impact on audit opinion, right, Kamil? This is a question on audit evidence. So you just keep yourself down to risk. This is not a question on audit report, right, where you think about the impact on opinion, right? So don't do that. Never do that. So how many marks are we left with? 7 minus 3, 4. So how many evidence? Now, when I am reviewing the working paper file, what evidence will I find? What evidence will you find? In the working paper file of government grant? Now, because we have done the answer above, what evidence will you find in the working paper file of government grant? You have the answer above. So I think if I am a manager or you are a manager, the very first thing I will find in the file is the copy of the grant agreement. So will there be a copy of the grant agreement in the file? Why am I writing the word copy? Because it's a management document. So in my working paper file, will there be a copy of the grant agreement? There will be, right? So copy of the grant agreement to confirm. Why will there be a copy of the grant agreement in my file? To confirm the date, to confirm the amount and the conditions associated with grants. So you have to write it in the exam paper, right? So you start with the word copy and you then write the word confirm, right? So when you're writing an evidence, you need to write confirming again. Okay, next, will I have a copy of the bank statement in my working paper file? Copy of, sorry, just 1 minute. Copy of bank statement in my file as well, which the manager will review. So the manager will find a copy of the bank statement in my file to confirm the receipt of $20 million, to confirm the receipt of $20 million. What else will the manager get in my file? Will he get notes of discussions with the management, notes of discussion with rider management, which I had to confirm the rationale of, to confirm their plans of utilizing the grant, to confirm plan of utilizing the grant, right? Okay, will I have another notes of discussion again? Notes of discussion again in the file for another discussion I had with the finance director. Notes of discussion with finance director to confirm the rationale of recording $20 million as an income, to confirm the rationale of recording the full amount as other income. So a procedure start with an action, right? But when you're writing an evidence in the file you have working papers, right? So either you have a copy of something or you have a notes of something. The copy and notes is defining the working papers, right? Right. So these are forms of working paper. And the last one, uh, what else we had? Sorry, I'm just missing the point. I'm going up. The last point we had discussed with writer, finance director. Okay, that's the only thing, right? So fine. So if you are a manager, how many working papers have you found in the file? You found a copy, you found a copy, you found a notes, you found a notes. So do you all agree that all this is evidence? Working papers. Do you agree a copy is a working paper? A copy is a working paper? A copy of a management document? A copy of a management document is a working paper in the exam? Okay, do you understand the notes? Notes of discussion is a working paper in the exam paper? Okay, do you understand even if you're doing a recalculation, what evidence will you have for recalculation? You will have results of recalculation. Results of recalculation. So if you are doing recalculation, if the manager is reviewing your file, what will you see in the file for recalculation? The manager will see in your file for recalculation what? Results of recalculation. So there are different forms of working paper, right? No, Amu Sam, you basically ask for original when you're performing work. But when you develop your working paper file, do you put the original in your working paper file or do you put the copy in the working paper file? Right? You put the copy. So when you are working on the original, right? But when you are developing a working paper file, will the manager see the original in the working paper file or will the manager see the copy in the working paper file? Definitely the copy, right? Receipt of the grant payment Bahawal is the copy of the bank statement, right? So in the working paper file, you will have the copy of the bank statement. I wrote that as number 2 evidence on top. Yes, definitely, Kripa. The test of controls are also part of working paper. You have results of test of controls in the working paper file. Everything the auditor perform, is it documentary? Everything the auditor perform, is it documentary? right? And can there be something without copy, notes, and results in the working paper file? For example, in your working paper, you have a representation letter. So will you say a copy of the representation letter? No, you will just say a representation letter, because representation letter is what belongs to the auditor, right? So you will have the representation letter in the working paper file. Representation letter. You will not say copy of the representation letter. So you will simply say representation letter, because it's in the original form. So a lots of working paper goes into the file in the form of copy. I hope you agree. A lot of working paper goes into the file as notes. A lot of working paper goes in the file as like results, and a lot of working papers goes in form in an original form, right? Yes, emails will be in the original form if the email has been done by the auditor to the management, if there is any need of taking emails in the exam paper. But I've never seen emails coming in the exam paper in any context. Either it's a copy, it's a note, it's a result, it's a representation letter. Please watch my previous webinar, Sanoop, and there are many other students asking the same question. I've covered so many types of evidence in my previous webinars, apart from copy, notes, results, and representation letter, right? So is the working paper form clear to all of you? So is the nature of question clear? How you develop a procedure and how you develop a working paper, right? So how you start a procedure? Tell me how you start a procedure. With what? With action. And how you start writing evidence in the exam? What's the starting point of the evidence? When you're writing an evidence, what's the starting point? WP, working paper, plus copy, notes, results, working paper. You start writing it with a working paper. And do you have the source copy of grant agreement? Do you have the source? Notes of discussion with management. Do you have source even? So working paper plus source plus purpose. So only the way you start it is different. So you start the evidence with a working paper. And please remember the different forms of working paper I wrote above. But when you are writing a procedure starts with, just 1 minute. Procedure starts with action plus the source plus the purpose. So it's only the start which is different, right? It's only the start which is different. The rest remains the same. Are you all comfortable with it? So working papers, how many types of working papers are there on my page in front of you? Notes, copy, results, representation. No, working paper is a source. Look at this. Who asked this question? Maria, look at this. Copy is a working paper, right? But copy of what? Copy of the grant agreement, right? The grant agreement is the source. Copy of what? Copy of what? That what, Maria, is the source. Copy of bank statement. What is the bank statement? The source of which you had a copy. Notes of discussion with rider management. With whom you had a discussion? You had discussion with rider management. So rider management is the source. So I hope you all agree that the yellow, again, the yellow is the working papers. Let me do the coloring again. The yellow is the working paper. The grant agreement again is the source. The grant agreement is the source. The bank statement is the source. The same colors I can use over here. The discussion with rider management is the source. Sorry, rider management is the source. And finance director is the source. And again, every time I wrote it, I wrote confirm. Confirm is to be in green. Confirm is green. Confirm is green. I hope, Maria, you are clear now. Confirm is in green and confirm is in green, right? So again, it's the same way. So you have the copy, you have the working paper in yellow, you have the source in blue, and you have the purpose in green. And the same way goes with procedure. In procedure, you have the action in yellow, you have the source in blue, and you have the purpose in green. Is everyone clear? And if you have further questions, please do watch my previous webinars on evidence, and you will gain more knowledge. So I've given you the hyperlinks right in my presentation. Which day is an illogical question. See my PowerPoint presentation. I've given you the hyperlinks. You just need to click on them and you reach there, Salva. So can you see the hyperlinks of my previous webinars? Just click on them and reach the destination, or copy them in the browser and reach. Okay, so how has been the day so far? We are wrapping up another topic, evidence, but not the full evidence. After the break, we have another exercise on evidence, because that's not the end of evidence. There's much more to learn on evidence. But have you gained concept of comment on the matters, marking scheme? Have you gained how you go down with evidence? And please watch the previous webinars here. 3 hours plus 3 hours plus 3 hours, 9, plus the webinar you're watching today, total 12 hours. Will that refine your comment on matters? Will that refine your working papers? Will that refine the action, source, and purpose? So I hope you enjoyed the session so far. It's time for a break now. And right, we'll resume at 10:15. Right, 10:15 Pakistan Standard Time. It's almost psychologically 10 o'clock now in Pakistan. So in 15 minutes, 10:15, I'll be meeting you back. Until the end of the class, we'll do the exercise on evidence, which is another question which comes on evidence. I will be guiding you about the marking scheme of that, and I will be giving you some drillings of the past paper as well, so that you are excellently prepared for this topic in the exam paper. So have a break, relax yourself, come back to the webinar again. Don't miss the last 1 hour, because that is another question on evidence, which is very different from the one we just did. So 10:15 p.m. please back to the classroom. I hope you heard it loud and clear, everyone. Okay, when is the break ending? Can you all confirm me? So I just can be assured that you heard it. 10:15 p.m. break will be over and we will resume. And I'm putting this to all of you in the chat box, right? So off to a break, have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, come back fresh, and we'll spend another 60 or 75 minutes on another episode of evidence. Okay, please do drop your feedback if you failed to drop so on the session so far and the overall learnings from the webinar so far. And I'll see you right after the break of 15 minutes. I'm muting myself, right? Thank you. Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope all of you can hear me. Just please confirm that so I can start with the last part of the day 4. Okay, that's great. That's wonderfully great. All of you can hear me. So let's resume where we left, and let's start with the final part of procedures and audit evidence. Now, as I was discussing with you prior to the break, that evidence, there are two types of questions, right? We just completed one type of question prior to the break. So now let's take a look at the second type of question which comes on evidence, which is right here. I'm just copying it and I'll take it to a new page. So when you take a print out, you have a tidy looking support file. Okay, on the new page, the second type of question which comes on evidence, the second type of question on evidence. And I will be solving it a bit as well. Okay, and this is the second type of question on evidence right in front of your screen. Comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. Now, this question has come less times in the past paper. Now, when you look at this question, it's a pretty simple question asking you, comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained by the team. So what do you need to do? You need to do the comment. Comment on what? Comment on the sufficiency and the appropriateness of the evidence which is obtained by the team. So will the evidence be given in the exam paper to you? Because the examiner is saying obtained by the team. So will the examiner tell you in the case study what evidence has been obtained by the team? Then only you can comment on it. So will the evidence obtained by the team given in the case study, everyone? Then only you can comment on it, right? Right. So definitely, right? So the evidence obtained by the team will be in the case study. What you need to do in a question like such, the evidence obtained by the team will be given in the case study, will be given in the case study. I'll just show you that. Will be given in the case study. We'll solve a case study on it. Don't worry about it. Evidence obtained by the team will be given in the case study. Now what you need to do, you will read the evidence they have obtained. It might be right, it might be wrong. They might have obtained the right evidence, they might have obtained a wrong evidence. So you need to comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained. I'm using the short form S&A. I hope you can understand that. S&A is sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained. You need to comment on it. Now, when you're commenting on it, you need to be very clear. You are commenting basically on the issues or on the shortcomings or on the uh, you're commenting on the issues and shortcomings in the evidence obtained. So if you think evidence was not rightly obtained, or the evidence was inappropriate, or the evidence was insufficient, so you will comment on it, right? So you will comment on the issues, you will comment on the shortcomings in the evidence obtained. So you will read the case study, and wherever you think the evidence obtained by the team is insufficient or inappropriate, you will just keep commenting on it, and you will tell examiner why the evidence obtained by the team is insufficient, or why the evidence obtained by the team is inappropriate. So why the evidence obtained is insufficient and why the evidence obtained is inappropriate. And for every comment, how many marks will you get for every comment? 1 mark per comment. So why the evidence gathered by the team is insufficient or why the evidence gathered by the team is inappropriate, every time you focus on the why, you explain examiner the why, because when you are commenting, your comment cannot be without why. You cannot just highlight the problem, but you need to tell why it is a problem, right? So if there is an issue in the evidence, you need to explain why. If there is a shortcoming in the evidence, you need to explain why. So why the evidence obtained is insufficient and why the evidence obtained is inappropriate. Every time you write this, you get 1 mark per comment. 1 mark per comment. And I'll be doing an exercise on that to guide you how you do the why comment. Now, try to understand one thing where the student gets confused, just like the topic we were doing yesterday, ethical professional issues, where the student gets confused with professional issues. Now, rather than you go into the classification and in the exam you are confused, is it sufficient? No. Is it appropriate? What is sufficiency? No. What is appropriateness? Should I tell examiner this is insufficient? No. Should I tell examiner this is inappropriate? And you're wasting your time. Just like, should I put it as an ethical issue? No. Should I put it as a professional issue? Rather than you come out of sufficiency and appropriateness and you think about that when you are reading the case, when you're reading the case, you will find somewhere in the case, somewhere in the case that the evidence gathered by team, now look at the word I'm using now, evidence gathered by the team is not adequate. See, I've come out of the classification. You will find somewhere in the case that the evidence gathered by the team is not adequate. Annotate, annotate it, annotate it. So wherever you find the evidence is not adequate, highlight it, then highlight it, then highlight it, because you need to write an answer. So wherever you find that the evidence is not adequate, just annotate it, and then later explain why you believe evidence is inadequate, is not adequate. So come out of the classification that is it sufficient, is it appropriate? Yes, you should know the literal meaning of the word sufficiency and appropriateness, but in the exam, if you waste time on the classification, then that's a big problem. You are a manager. The manager don't do the classification. I was very clear on that on the day 3 yesterday. I hope you all remember that. So are you presenting this answer this way? Are you presenting this answer this way in the exam paper? Like this, you're making 2 columns, and in the one column, you're saying sufficiency, and in the other column, sorry, in the other column, you're saying appropriateness. Is that the way to present the answer? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So is the examiner asking you to classify from the case study what is sufficient? Is it an F8 paper? Is it a multiple choice question paper which asks you that is it sufficient, true or false? Is it appropriate, true or false? Is that the paper you're doing? So are you taking a tension or a stress level of classifying the issue in sufficiency and appropriateness, or are you focusing on explaining why the evidence is inadequate? What is right approach? What is right approach, everyone? Explaining the problem or classifying the problem? So this is absolutely wrong way, right? I'm deleting it. Now look at an example, right? Yes, for the sake of knowledge, no doubt, even though you do this in the F8 paper, but I don't know why you forget this. For the sake of knowledge, you know sufficiency relates with the sample size, right? And when you talk about appropriateness, appropriateness relates with reliability. How the evidence is reliable, and the evidence is from the right source. Evidence is reliable. Evidence is reliable, right? So you're looking at the reliability of the evidence when it comes to appropriate, or evidence is from the right source. It's from the right source. That is appropriateness. So evidence, the sample size of the evidence is the sufficiency, the reliability and the right source is the appropriateness. Yes, evidence must be credible. Credible is the appropriateness. Sufficiency is the quantity of the evidence, right? And appropriateness is the quality. But are you concerned about classifying it in the exam paper? Are you confusing yourself in the exam paper to judge is it sufficient, is it appropriate, or are you just thinking about is it adequate or is it inadequate as a broader term? It's the quality. Is that clear to everyone? This is the F8 knowledge, right? Sufficiency and appropriateness. You do so much time in the F8 paper. Now let's give you an idea how you go about with a question like such. Let's do a drilling so that you're clear. Drilling, and I'm taking the September December 19 paper. This is not on the practice platform. So again, I need to show you the PDF copy on your screen. September December 19 paper on your screen. And this time we are looking at the question number. No, sorry, we're looking at the March 20 paper. Sorry, we're looking at the March 20 paper. The March 20 paper. And in the March 20 paper, it was perhaps the question number 2, where we got a question on sufficiency and appropriateness. So let me show you that. This is a question number 2. I hope all of you can see this. Question 2 of the March 20 paper. Let me put that on the Word file for you. We are doing the drilling not of September December 19 paper. We are doing the drilling of the March 2020 paper. Question number 2. Not the full question number 2, a part of it. Let me show you the part. You go down the question number 2 of the March 20 paper, and you will see a requirement here. Look at the requirement A, but A2. Look at this. Leave A1. A1 is about fraud, which is the knowledge. Look at this, the one I'm highlighting. Can you read the requirement coming here? Just in 1 minute. A2, A3, and tell me you're ready. Okay, should I just copy this question and explain you the marking scheme before I talk about the answer? 11 marks. Okay, a lot of time the students don't read the question carefully, which is a big problem. And I always believe that reading a question carefully results in success. So a lot of times the students are in so rush, they fail to understand the question. If you fail to understand the question, will you write a good answer? Never. You will never write a good answer if you fail to understand the question. See how important is it to understand the question. In respect of the development cost, number 1, and in respect of the trade receivable. So how many issues we have to work upon? We have the first issue, which is development cost number 1, and we have the second issue, which is trade receivables, right? Number 2, right? We have 2 issues. Now, what we have to do for 2 issues? In respect of the development cost and trade receivable, comment. So the very first thing we have to do is comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained, right? So the first thing we have to do is comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained. That's 1. Under the development cost. So under the development cost, we first need to comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. That's number 1. And number 2, we need to recommend. We need to recommend what? Actions. And including. Can you see this word including? Is that a separate requirement? Including further evidence which should be obtained. Further procedure or further evidence? Further procedure or further evidence? Is there a difference? Is the examiner asking for evidence? And how do you start evidence? Do you start evidence with review, recalculate? Do you start evidence with action, or do you start evidence with a working paper? You start evidence with a working paper, copy of notes of. I hope you recall it. That's good. So we need to comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. Then we need to write actions and evidence, actions and further evidence. So how many things we need to do for every requirement? 3. The same for trade receivable and the same for the development cost. Now try to understand the difference between actions and evidence. This is a very common jargon in the AAA paper. I hope you all agree with me. This is a very common jargon in the AAA paper, actions. But a lot of times the students are unaware of what is the purpose of action and how to write it. So many times when you do a 100 marks paper for AAA, you come across the word known as actions. Try to understand it once forever. In whichever question, in whichever question you come across, you come across the term action. Action means something, action means steps taken by the auditor, steps taken by the auditor to resolve an issue in the case study. Action, the purpose of action means to resolve an issue. What is the purpose of a procedure? The purpose of a procedure is to gather evidence. The purpose of a procedure is to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence, right? The purpose of an action, what is the purpose of an action? To resolve something. So in order to resolve something, you take an action. So action means steps taken by the auditor to resolve something of an issue in the case study. Action. Do you believe action is a verb? And just like a procedure, because it is an action, it should start with something like discuss. Because it's an action, you might need to start it with review, right? Because it's an action. By default, it's an action. So there is a lot of similarity between a procedure and an action, but you need to understand the procedure is developed to gather evidence. Procedure is developed to gather evidence, but action is developed to resolve an issue. Action is developed to resolve an issue. Most of the time, because you're resolving an issue and you're resolving an issue with the management, so most of the time, the most appropriate action is discuss or is inquire. I hope you're getting my point, because you're resolving something, right? And assume when you're resolving something, with whom are you resolving something? With the management. There might be a problem between you and the management and you want to resolve it. There might be a disagreement between you and the management and you're resolving it. Uh, the management has recognized the government grant in full. You want to resolve the matter. How would you resolve the matter without discussing? Will you discuss with the finance director the right accounting treatment to resolve it? Will you tell the finance director that as per IS 20 this is the wrong accounting treatment? So do you believe discussion in most contexts is the most common action taken by the auditor? Do you all agree with me? So is everyone clear so far, so forth? Waiting for your replies. Right? So what is the examiner asking in the question from March 20? Comment on the adequacy of the evidence, actions, and further evidence. Right? So action is taken to resolve an issue. And most of the time, the most common action is to discuss with management, because without discussing with management, can you resolve an issue? Without discussing with rider company management, can you change the accounting treatment? Tell me. Without discussing with rider finance director, can you change the accounting treatment of the government grant? Can you? No. So do you believe you need to take an action? So please understand the literal meaning of the word action, procedure, and evidence. They all came in one class today. Okay, let's start the journey. Let's look at the problems in the development cost. I'll do it and you do it for the trade receivable, right? So I'm doing the development cost in the webinar and you will do the trade receivable as your home assignments. Is that clear to everyone? So let me do a drilling on comment, actions, and further evidence. Let's start the journey. Okay, so I am working on the development cost in the webinar. How many marks I have in total? 11. Is the examiner saying marks are split? No. Examiner saying you have total 11 marks. Now it's up to me. I consume more marks in development cost and less on trade receivable. For example, I write 7 marks on development cost and 4 on trade receivable. I can do that, right? Because examiner is not binding me. So I have 11 marks. Everything I write is worth 1 mark. Every comment, every comment is worth 1 mark. I hope you all agree with me. 1 mark per comment. Every action I write is 1 mark per action, plus every evidence I write is 1 mark per evidence. So how many total points I should have? 11. Irrespective, I have more points in development cost and less in trade receivable, or I have more points in trade receivable and less in development cost. But my total number of points should be how much? Everyone? 11. Thank you. Okay, let's start the journey from the paper. Okay, development cost is what I am solving. Comment on the sufficiency, actions, and evidence. Let me show you the development cost and you start to read it. Okay, development cost, March 20 paper. Okay, go back the case. Okay, can you just read the development cost from here in August 2014? Just let me give you some time for this. And up to here, password to the audit team. Password to the audit team. Can you just read from the start to the end in August 14 up to the password to the audit team, which I've highlighted? I'm giving you 4 minutes to read it out. And if you can find where the evidence is inadequate, and if you can find some actions and you can find some evidences as well, take 5 minutes maximum and prepare yourself for an answer during the live webinar. Your time starts now. Start reading it. Keep a pen and paper with you and keep noting the points you want to. Yes, I have given you 5 minutes to read the question, right? That's the reason, Mohammed Tanveer, there is no voice. I think students are working on the question. They're reading the question on the screen and finding the problems. I hope you're clear with that, Mohammed Tanveer. That's the reason there was no voice, because there was a pin drop silence because the students were working on the question in front of the screen. Okay, I've noted your answer, Aisha. You are on the right track. Very good answer, Kamil. You are on the right track. So you're finding the inadequacies, Aisha and Kamil. You're finding the inadequacies and evidence, which is good. Yes, that's good, Bahawal. Wonderful point. That's the inadequacy of evidence. Yes, very good answer, Janice. You are on the right track. Very good answer, Kamil. Yes, very good answer, Kiran Kumar, Ola, Huda, Omar, Laiba. You're all going on the right track. Tongai, Asad, wonderful. So that means you've all read it, right? So should I start my analysis and tell you where is the answer and how you should formulate an answer? So now stop the chat box, focus on the understanding because I'm just now focusing on the answer. I'm not looking at the chat box for next 5 minutes. Okay, let's see what is to be done. Focus on the case. Okay, we need to comment on the sufficiency. We need to write the actions and procedures. That's what we need to do. Let's see how many things can we identify from the case study. Let's start the analysis. I've just copied the question during the break of 5 minutes when you were working on it on my Microsoft Word file. I hope you can all now see the Microsoft Word file in front of you where the question has been copied down, right? Let's start the analysis. Okay, in August 20x4, the group commenced development of a new security system. That's good. And incurred an expenditure of 600,000. So the group incurred an expenditure on the development, which is 600,000 up to the financial year end, which has been capitalized. So they have capitalized the development cost as an intangible assets. Okay, that's fine. The only audit evidence obtained. So let's see what's the problem with the evidence obtained. Have the audit team obtained the right evidence for the development cost of 600,000, which has been capitalized, or have they taken a wrong evidence? Is the evidence adequate or not? The first evidence they obtained is agreement. Agreement means to reconcile something. So they reconcile a sample, fine, of a cost included in 600,000 capitalized to supporting documents such as supplier invoices. So they're just confirming the expense. They have verified a sample of 600,000 to the supplier invoices just to confirm that the expense is true. It is not a false expense. So you're just confirming that the expense has indeed occurred. The next is you took a cash flow projection, and in the cash flow projection for the project, which indicates that a positive cash flow will be generated by 20x8, the projection has been arithmetically checked. You only arithmetically reviewed the projection. That's next. And a written representation was taken by you, and a written representation from the management stating that the management consider the development cost to be successful. That is it. Tell me, looking at the three bullets here before I read the other question, have in, whether the evidence obtained is inadequate? The answer is yes, for a number of reasons. First of all, uh, the audit team has not obtained any evidence on the breakup of the 600,000, which could have confirmed the element of a research cost. So, has the audit team identified the element of a research cost while they were carrying a work on the 600,000? Just confirming the supplier invoices, will that confirm how much is the research cost? No. So, just confirming the supplier invoices will confirm the amount of expense, will not confirm the bifurcation of expense Uh, can all of you hear me? So apologize for that, but that was just for a minute and two. Okay, we were in the middle of a discussion. I hope you can see my screen. And we were discussing whether the evidence obtained by the audit team is sufficient or not. So they just had an agreement of the sample of invoices to confirm the expense was indeed occurred, but they didn't had any evidence on the bifurcation between research cost and the development cost. So let me write the first comment. Let me write the first comment on sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence, right? Let's see how we go about writing the answer. Yes, the marking scheme has changed now. It's 1 mark, right? It's not 1.5 marks anymore. So I need to guide you about the most updated marking scheme in every webinar, wherever they have changed in. Okay, let's write the first comment. See how you write the first comment. In the first comment, you write the evidence, the uh, the agreement to supplier invoices, the agreement to supplier invoices only confirm that expense was indeed occurred, expense was indeed occurred, but failed to provide any evidence on the bifurcation, bifurcation, on the bifurcation of research cost and development cost within the dollar 600,000. So the agreement to supplier invoices only confirmed that expense was indeed occurred, which is fine, but it failed to provide evidence on the bifurcation of research and development costs within 600,000. Thus, there is no evidence on research cost. Thus, there is no evidence gathered by the team on research cost. And I close my answer and I write 1 mark. Now, I need to recommend further evidence. So my further evidence would be what? My further evidence would be a breakup. My further evidence would be a breakup of dollar 600,000, a breakup of development cost of dollar 600,000. You never write the word copy with the breakup, right? So in the exam, you never say copy of the breakup, you say breakup, because management provides the breakup to the auditor directly, right? So even if you write the word copy of breakup, no issues, right? So the evidence you need is is the breakup of the development cost of 600,000 to confirm that to confirm whether there is any component of cost which should be classified as research cost. I hope my voice is getting through to everyone. There is no further issues with voice. Is it going through? Okay, great. So we took a breakup, right, of the development cost. And so is that my evidence breakup? Will there be a breakup in my working paper file as a further evidence? Everyone agrees to this? And is everyone clear? We never write the word copy of breakup. We directly write the word breakup in the exam paper, right? So we get 1 mark for evidence, right? So 2 marks out of 11. Let's proceed further. Next. Okay, a cash flow projection has been arithmetically checked. Is that sufficient? Is that adequate? Should we review the basis of the cash flow forecast? Should we check the underlying basis, the assumptions used in the cash flow forecast? Is this realistic or not? Just checking the arithmetical accuracy of the cash flow projection, is that right, everyone? No. So should I put my second comment? So I'll put my second comment. Uh, alone alone arithmetical accuracy, alone arithmetical accuracy of cash flow forecast is not adequate evidence, is not adequate evidence because Earth, because this will not confirm, the underlying basis. This will not confirm the underlying basis and their adequacy. This will not confirm the underlying basis and their adequacy used in preparing the cash flow, forecast. So a low arithmetical accuracy of the cash flow forecast is is not an adequate evidence, because this will not confirm the underlying basis and their adequacy used in preparing the cash flow forecast. Thus, the audit team has gathered no evidence on the basis, nor nor have challenged the basis used in preparing the cash flow forecast. So are you getting the way of commenting on the evidence? Briefly, 1 mark. So what extra evidence should I have? Should I have notes of discussion with the finance director to confirm the underlying basis? Should I have notes of discussion as an evidence? Whenever you write evidence in the exam paper, you take an assumption that there is no limitation, right? Even though the limitation is given in the exam paper, so whenever you're writing an evidence, you will assume that there is no limitation and the limitation has been removed. So will I write in my evidence notes of discussion confirming the underlying basis? Notes of discussion confirming, notes of discussion with finance director confirming the underlying basis used in preparing the cash flow forecast, and the realisticness of the assumptions used. Full stop. Notes of discussion. So am I writing a procedure? No, I'm writing the evidence. So I have to be very careful, right? You can use any format, right? You can immediately write an action after you write a comment. It's totally up to you how you present your answer. So how many marks have I got out of 11 so far, everyone? Have you got 4 of 11 marks? We just into one area, right? Okay, you go down. The last thing, a written representation from the management. Do you believe the written representation was taken too early? Normally, the written representation is the last resort, of evidence. Do you believe audit a team has done very less work and they have taken a representation too early? They should have done more work. They should have done work on the technical feasibility. They should have done more work on the financial feasibility, on the operational feasibility of the new security system. They should have spent time on the accounting treatment of the research cost. Do you think they've taken representation a bit too early in a hurry, which is not an appropriate way of performing the audit? So last comment, and I'm exiting from this question. The last comment, the representation is a last resort of evidence, and it seems that the audit team has obtained representation as a source of evidence too early, or when too less work was performed by the audit team. The representation is not a substitute of the evidence obtained directly by the auditor. 1 mark. Read my paragraph and tell me, does it make sense to all of you? Read my para 3 and tell me, are you comfortable with the knowledge I portray in the para 3? Right? So Perhaps you performed nothing, just an arithmetical check, just verification of the supplier invoices, and you wrap up your work on development cost just by taking a representation letter. That's too early, right? It cannot be a substitute of the evidence obtained directly by the auditor. So are you getting the way of doing a comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence? Anywhere in my comment was I concerned about the classification of sufficiency and appropriateness? Were I concerned about the classification anywhere when I was writing the 3 paragraphs in the live webinar? Were I concerned about the classification? So are you getting the way of writing an answer? And there are so many other points, right, which I cannot just cover up within the limitation of the webinar. But let's go down with the next paragraph we left with. If I read the last paragraph, which I didn't, you are aware, you are aware that the group finance director was asked about the cash flow projection, which he had prepared. He was reluctant to answer question. He was reluctant to answer questions, simply saying that the assumptions underlying the projections have been agreed to the group business plan. So he is reluctant to answer question. Is that a problem which I should resolve through an action? Is that a problem between the auditor and the management, that the management is reluctant to answer questions? Is that an issue which needs to be resolved? Do you all agree? Is that an issue which needs to be resolved? Yes, good. So he was reluctant to answer questions. See, I write an action here. Action. The audit team should discuss, or the audit manager dis, should discuss with the group finance director, or should inform the group finance director. The auditor power to access all information and explanation, and the responsibility of the management to provide all explanations to auditor, to provide all explanations to auditor. So do you need to clarify this to the finance director, that this is my responsibility and this is my power and this is your responsibility, so you cannot be reluctant here, right? Should I tell him that you have an audit engagement letter? Kindly see the audit engagement letter I sent you before the start of the audit. So is that an action that you should inform the group finance director of your powers? Should inform the group finance director. Is that an action you are taking uh, to resolve the problem? Right? Is that an action you're taking to resolve the problem? Right? And Bahaval, it's just a change of term, right? You say right, you say power. It's the power of the auditor, right? So I'm more comfortable with the word power of the auditor here, right? So am I making a bifurcation of headings here, that I do headings like this actions and I do headings like this evidence? No, I'm writing them in one go, irrespective they are evidence or irrespective they are actions. So you just write them under one heading, actions and further evidence. See this heading, actions and further evidence. So you're not taking any tension in the exam hall, irrespective you're writing whatever. So you just put one broad heading here, actions and further evidence, and you try to write everything under. So I get another 1 mark here, right? Last, go up. Okay, he was reluctant, right? Next, he provided a spreadsheet showing the projection, but the underlying information could not be accessed, as the file was password protected. So is he trying to limit the scope of the auditor by giving auditor a password protected file, knowing the fact that the auditor have power to access all information? So is the finance director trying to limit the scope of the auditor? Should we tell the finance director that we have a certain set of power which is given in the audit engagement letter, and the group finance director would not provide the password to the audit team? So is that an issue which needs to be resolved? So last issue to be resolved. The manager, the audit manager, should discuss with the group finance director the preconditions of audit, the preconditions of audit mentioned in the audit engagement letter, mentioned in the audit engagement letter, uh, reinforcing reinforcing the fact that auditor has access to all information, and nothing can and uh, auditor has access to all information, and management could not limit the scope of auditor. And you can also tell the finance director, uh, the audit manager need to inform need to inform of the implications on audit report if the limitation on audit work is not removed. So are you trying to threaten the finance director through informing him of the implication if the limitation on audit work is not removed? So that's also part of your action, right? Sometimes your actions have to be intimidating. You need to intimidate through your action to get the director on the right track, because it seems that the director is not willing to come on the right track. So you speak politely, and then you need to intimidate that finance director. No, third and fourth action is not exactly the same, because over here I generally speak of the auditor power. Look at my language here, preconditions of audit. See how different language are used here. Look at the engagement letter. Am I using the same terminologies in my 3 and 4? No, I'm using a very different terminology. So are you getting the track? 5 marks under actions and further evidence, and almost like 3 marks under my comment on sufficiency. So 8 marks out of 11. But my bottom line here is, which I need all of you to answer: are you understanding how to solve a question like such, comment which ask you comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained by the team? So were you able to find the flaws in the evidence obtained? Were you able to identify the shortcomings in the evidence obtained? And are you concerned about classifying them into sufficiency and appropriateness? Or are you just speaking of why it is inadequate? And is everyone clear about actions? If there is a problem in the case study, you need to resolve it through actions. And I hope you're very clear with the terminology evidence. So I purposely wrote evidence, breakup notes. So I was very focused on writing evidence, not procedures. So please ensure that you read the question carefully first, because if you are unable to read the question carefully first, instead of writing evidence, you can write procedures. Or you might do a wrong answer and you regret later coming out of the exam hall. So tell me, how important is it to read the question carefully? How important is it to read the question carefully? How important is that? Do you all agree it's very important? So if you read the question carefully, remember there can be a comma in the question which splits the question. There there can be the word and in the question which breaks the question. And how many times the student overlooks the comma, or how many times the student overlooks the word and? So you need to read the question carefully to see how many things you need to do. How many things is the examiner asking you to do? Is the examiner asking you to do? Then only you can write a complete answer. So I hope you understand the importance of reading the questions, just like the March 20 paper. So you write a complete answer. This really impact on your passing, right? The AAA paper, because in the AAA paper, at times the question is asking for more than one thing, and the students overlook the word comma, or the student overlooks the and they come out writing an incomplete answer, and then they expect examiner to pass them at 50. How can the examiner pass you at 50 when you've given an incomplete answer to the examiner? I hope you're all clear on that. So have you got the message, procedures, evidence question number 1, evidence question number 2? Right. Now I just want to do one last thing with you. When I was discussing with you the question number 1 on evidence, right? When I was discussing with you the question 1 on evidence, which basically ask you comment on the matters and explain the evidence, I want to give you some guidance for incremental marks. How can you get incremental marks on the question number 1? Let me copy the question number 1 again, where I was discussing that with you. And I believe you can gain extra marks in this case. Okay, let me comment this, copy this question again, and take it down to my question 1 on evidence again. Okay, now you are all clear with the question 1, right? Comment on the matters and explain the evidence, right? And you're very clear on comment on the matters, right? But I just want to give you a very good suggestion now. Comment on the matters, and you know the matter is the accounting treatment. The matter is the accounting treatment, and you go with comments. You comment on the materiality, you comment on the accounting treatment, and you comment on the risk, which is under or overstatement, right? Now, when I was writing the government grant with all of you, be very focused, right? When I was writing the government grant with you in the webinar, I got 3 marks, right? By writing the paragraph, because there was just one materiality, there was one materiality, there was one accounting treatment, and there was one risk, right? But what if in the exam, the accounting matter consist of discrete figures, consist of discrete figures, and the accounting treatment consist of multiple issues? Will that increase your scoring opportunity? What if in the exam the accounting matter is having different figures? For example, in the paper you get something about loan, and loan has a value. But along with loan having a value, there is also the value of the finance cost given in the case. Now, if that is the case, can you find materiality? Can you find materiality for the loan by taking it in the context of the total assets and finding the percentage, because loan is primarily an SOFP item? And can you find the materiality of the finance cost separately? Because finance cost materiality will be taken on the profit before tax, because it is a statement of comprehensive income item. So if you are working on a situation where you have discrete figures in a situation, and you know these are discrete figures, one is a P&L item and one is a balance sheet item, loan and the finance cost, something like this, will you be able to find 2 marks of materiality here by dividing the loan with total assets and by dividing the finance cost with the profit before tax? Is everyone clear? 1 mark and 1 mark in a question on evidence I'm talking about, right? In a question on evidence I'm talking about. Is everyone clear with this example? Okay, take another example. For example, the accounting uh, meta, the accounting meta given in case relates with relates with impairment loss recognized. The question tells you that the impairment loss was recognized, impairment loss recognized by management. So is that good? The management has recognized an impairment loss. Has the management done the right accounting treatment by recognizing the impairment loss when the indicator of impairment exists, for example? So the question is telling you that the impairment loss was recognized by the management and you need to comment on the meta. So what will you do first? See, you will comment on the materiality of the impairment loss if that is given, and you will get 1 mark. Then you will comment on the accounting treatment of the impairment loss. Now get to my point. You will comment on the accounting treatment of impairment loss, but this is a situation in exam paper where the accounting treatment consists of multiple issues. Now, when you are commenting on the accounting treatment of impairment loss, perhaps you will first comment on the uh, presence of the indicators. You will first comment on the presence of the indicator, that is one accounting treatment, 1 mark. You will then comment on the determination determination of the right recoverable amount. You will then talk about the determination of the right recoverable amount, which is higher of the value in use or fair value less cost to sell. Is it a possibility that the management has understated the impairment loss even though they have recognized it? So should you write the accounting treatment of the recoverable amount, that the recoverable amount should be rightly calculated? So you comment on the determination of the right recoverable amount, which is the higher of the value in use or fair value. What if the management has taken it at the lower? Or what if the management has determined the value in use wrongly? Or what if the management has determined the fair value wrongly? Will that result in a wrong impairment loss recognized? Will that result in an understatement of an impairment loss? So when you are writing an accounting treatment of a complex situation like impairment loss, you can gain multiple marks. First, by commenting on the indicator, then commenting on the recoverable amount, and then finally commenting on the impairment loss being when the carrying amount exceeds the recoverable amount. And then you judge whether the impairment loss recognized by management is the right amount or the wrong amount. So you can gain multiple marks for accounting treatment. So the government grant accounting treatment is very simple. The impairment loss accounting treatment is very different, where you can gain marks more. So are you finding opportunities where you can gain more marks on materiality in a given situation, everyone? Are you finding opportunities where you can gain more marks on commenting on the accounting treatment if the accounting treatment is very complex, or there is a lot of comments you can make on accounting treatment? Now tell me, the comment on the government grant and the comment on the impairment, can we make more comments on impairment, because there are so many components of impairment, the indicators, the recoverable amount, the fair value, the value in use? Is that clear? So is there a lot to talk about in impairment, like a comment on the indicator, 1, the comment on the recoverable amount, 2, and the comment on the impairment loss when carrying amount exceeds the recoverable amount? So is there more space to comment on impairment? Are you getting my point? Is there more space to comment on impairment than the space you have in government grant, for example? Right? Now, understand another situation. What if you get a situation in comment on matters when materiality is not given, when materiality is not possible? So then that means when you get a situation when materiality is not possible, then how would you go? You will not get any marks on materiality. So you will directly start with comment on the treatment, and you will directly start with risk. You cannot get any marks for materiality if numbers are not given and you cannot find the materiality. So you will get no marks for materiality because that's not possible. You cannot forcefully identify materiality. You cannot forcefully identify materiality. And in the past paper, there are a number of situations where examiner keeps materiality at zero because he's not giving you any numbers to work on materiality. And in some situation, the accounting treatment is so productive that you can gain marks on. Look at an example, which you have to do as an home question. September, December 19 question. Look at the requirement of the question number 2 of the September, December 19 question on your screen. Look at this requirement. Are you familiar with this requirement we just did in the question in the class today? Just read this requirement quickly. Have you done this requirement today in the classroom? And tell me you agree or disagree. This is question number 2, right, of the September, December 19 exams, which you have to do as your assignment. Okay, do you all agree? Apart from just one student, Nawami, who's saying yes, sir. Do you agree this requirement was done in the class today, in the webinar today? Okay, thank you. Okay, if you all agree this was done in the webinar today, look at the accounting treatment here. The first accounting treatment here is the sale and lease back. Look at the first accounting treatment here, which is the sale and lease back. Is there any value given in the sale and lease back transaction? Is there any value given of the property which was de-recognized? Read this whole paragraph of sale and lease back. Is there any value in the entire paragraph? Tell me. So when you are commenting on the methods of sale and lease back, will you gain marks for materiality? No value, right? But when you are commenting on the accounting treatment of sales and lease back transaction, I'm just giving you a clue, right? Is the examiner talking about IFRS 16 and IFRS 15 in the last 2 lines? Is the examiner talking about IFRS 16 and IFRS 15 in the last 2 lines? Yes. Is there a clue? Now, when you're talking about a sale and lease back transaction in the exam paper, for example, okay, just give me 1 minute, right? For example, the sale and lease back transaction, which is in the September, December 19 exams, question number 2, you have no materiality, right? You have no materiality. But look at the accounting treatment. Examiner is giving you a clue. Examiner is giving you IFRS 15 sale and lease back. And examiner is giving you IFRS 16 sale. So that means because it's a sale and lease back, which is very complex, first of all, to understand that is it a sale transaction? Is it a genuine sales transaction? You need to quote the IFRS 15. You need to think about whether there was a transfer of control, has the whether control of the asset have been retained by the seller or whether it has been passed to the buyer. Sale and lease back, because that's very important. So do you need to write an accounting treatment for transfer of control to confirm whether the seller still retains the right over the asset, or whether the right over the asset have been passed, or the control over the asset have been passed to the buyer? Yes, when there is no transfer of control, that means there is no sale. So should we first write the accounting treatment for transfer of control to confirm the sale and the right accounting treatment of sale? Everyone? Okay, and then because the examiner is talking about the IFRS 16, then we need to talk about the right of use of asset. If indeed, for example, if I'm just taking a bit more time here, but because you have to do it yourself, I just want to guide you something. Look at this. Can you just read this in 1 minute so it makes sense to me and you? Can you just read this paragraph in 1 minute because I want to give you an example? that has the management recognized the sales transaction rightly? Can you just read it quickly, the paragraph of sale and lease back, and tell me you've read it? Just quickly read the sales and lease back transaction paragraph in 2 minutes. Right. So, do you agree that Lifeson company has rightly de-recognized the property sales? Because I think the lease life is very less, 10 years, and the remaining life of the property is in excess of 50 years. So I think the control have passed to the buyer. The control has passed to the buyer, right? So is Lifeson company right in de-recognizing the property? Is Lifeson company right in de-recognizing the property from the financial statement? Yes. But you need to write the accounting treatment of the transfer of control to justify that the accounting treatment adopted by the Lifeson company is right. So the Lifeson company is right. To justify that, you need to write the accounting treatment of transfer of control and then say that the accounting treatment adopted by Lifeson company is perfect. But have they recognized the right of use of asset? Because it's a sale, it's a lease back transaction. Should they recognize the right of use of asset? And I think the question is silent on that. Have they recognized the lease liability? Have they recognized the liability at the present value of lease payment? No. Have they recognized the gain or loss on the sale and leaseback transaction in the P&L, in the profit and loss? So I think even though they have de-recognized the property, which is right, but the question is silent as to whether they have recognized the right of use of asset, whether they've recognized the liability, or whether they've recognized the gain or loss in the profit and loss. So can we write the accounting treatments for right of use of asset and liability and gain and loss in the profit and loss to gain more marks, and tell the management, if management has not recognized it, then the right of use of asset is understated or the liability is understated? Are you getting my point, everyone? So in this question there was no materiality, right? But in this question you can gain so much on the accounting treatment. You can gain so much on the accounting treatment by writing the accounting treatment, gain so much on it by writing the IFRS 15 for transfer of control, and then writing the IFRS 16 for right of use of asset, liability, and the gain or loss in the profit and loss account. So I think the management has done the right treatment partially by de-recognizing the property. But about the other accounting treatments, because it's a sale and lease back transaction, so they should record the right of use of asset, which has not been recorded. So is there an opportunity to get like 3-4 marks from the accounting treatment here? Right? And then you can talk about the risk. I think the risk is if right of use of asset is not recorded. If right of use of asset is not recorded, that's the risk. Right? And then you speak about the evidence in working paper file. So I think out of the 8 marks, 3 to 4 marks can go on accounting treatment, 1 mark can go on the risk, and you can write like 3 evidences to wrap up your answer. Is that clear to everyone? So will you be solving this question, sale and lease back, in the next few hours from the webinar? If the time in your country is appropriate, there might be different time zones in different country, or at least you are wrapping up this topic tomorrow. Okay, please drop your feedback for the overall day for today. How productive is it was today, and how much you learned today, and how much you gained today. If you can just drop the feedback. So will you continue with the learnings and homeworks given to you today? And will you be wrapping up the reading of articles I recommended you, the watching of the webinars? Will you watch the previous webinars? Will you be going with the article readings and the questions you need to do, right? And please go over my presentation. There is a lot of good stuff in my presentation which I covered on my Word file. I'll share the Word file with you later in the next few hours, and you can take benefit of my slides even. Tomorrow is the last day of the webinar and a very, very important day because it will be another important session on the misconceptions on audit report. It's not just the question I'll be solving tomorrow, but I will generally be discussing the misconceptions the student have around audit report because there are so many of them, literally. So 3 hours tomorrow will refine your knowledge about audit report, and you will be in a better position to watch the previous webinars and take good command on audit report as a topic, right? Thank you so very much, all of you, for this feedback. And thank you so very much for taking your time out and participating in this live webinar, day 4 today. I'll see you back tomorrow with the day 5, the final day. I wish you all success in your upcoming exams, provided you study in an effective manner. So this is your tutor, Kashif Kamran, signing off from day 4 of the AAA Practice to Pass for June 21, being organized by ACCA Pakistan. Have a nice day. Stay safe and study effectively. I'll see you back on day 5, the final day tomorrow. Take care, goodbye, and Allah Hafiz.